Welcome to the next episode of our Rise of AI virtual chat. This is season 2. After a successful 18 episodes last year, we started today with a double feature. This is the second part of our double feature with our honorary guest, Michael Brehm, today. My name is Fabian Westerheide. I am an entrepreneur and investor with a passion for artificial intelligence, and this is a series of leading minds in AI. Briefly about the agenda. So first, if you are in the stream, say hello in the stream if you want to. If you watch this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. You're free to to tweet about this, take screenshots, share it with the world. This time we focus a little bit on how can AI make customer happier, but also on AI ecosystem and the implications of AI and the larger scope. This is a soft topic today. AI is always very soft. We had this discussion before, what is the definition of it and how do we see it? With this series, we try to be a little bit more operational, but also critical. We have now 1 hour virtual chat, then we have 3 AI roundtables. I will introduce them right before, so stay in the stream for the whole time. I will tell you when it is good to switch over. So my guest today is Michael Brehm. I would say, from my view, he's one of the oldest veterans out there I know. He's one of the first persons I have met in the ecosystem. He was involved into StudiVZ, which was prior to my time, but then he started to cooperate or was in the network of Team Europe, where I started, being an intern, later being able to start a couple of businesses with them. After his endeavors, he started to sell vouchers all over the world. So he was really good in scaling existing business models globally. You have heard of Rocket Internet. They did the same. So he did something this sim. He also started his own VC fund, but I say plural. He started a company which started funds. So a little bit of white label agency model. So he has a handful of venture capital investments there. He's a very active business angel. And then he became the CEO of I2X. And the first moment I was like, hey, he's a business guy like me doing AI, is this good? But then we spoke, we met again on a public panel a couple of years ago. I was like, wow, he's so much into this topic. I love this. I had the honor to invest as well in his company with Asgard. He's a longtime speaker at Rise of AI, as you can see here in the picture. And he's one of the best persons you can talk about outside of the box. So we will play now a short video about his company and give him time to enter our studio. Please. Welcome, Michael. Michael. Please imagine imaginary applause from everyone now on the live stream. I know it's a little bit a quiet thing, it's different. We have a conversation and a few people are listening to us in person, but the rest is there. How are you these days?
Great, really great. Thank you very much, Fabian, for the kind invitation. Very excited to be here today with you and on this beautiful day in Berlin.
So you have kids. You're married, you run a company with international people. How did the last 12 months impact your private life and business?
So let's start with private first. To be honest, it was actually a really nice and great time for the family because suddenly I was able to be home all the time. Normally I was traveling really a lot, 3, 4, 5 days per week. And now to be home, I have 3 little children, to kind of watch them so closely, to be with them every day, have breakfast, lunch, dinner. This is really amazing. So from that perspective, it was great and fantastic. From a business perspective, it's at the beginning it was actually oh my God, what is happening? I mean, a lot of changes within the company, a lot of adaptation, also a lot of struggle for actually everybody who suddenly had to adapt. People couldn't kind of go out. The first few months, it was also, and I think a lot of B2B enterprise companies had this. Companies were really holding back and saying, okay, no, stop, we don't move any purchases processes forward, we stop POCs, we just need to adjust. They really had like other issues like connectivity, lots of connectivity issues for people from at home, especially we're in the area of calls, so do you have enough bandwidth to do calls from home? So people were really struggling. So Q2 was really, I would say from a business perspective, was quite challenging and very, very intense. But from then on, it improved a lot, and currently it's going very well because, I mean, we're basically one of the software providers that helps you to digitize, that supports work from home, etc. So I would say we're more on the beneficiary side of the current situation.
So my feeling is that COVID case we have currently is accelerating the whole need for digitalization, and that overall every digital company is benefiting on top of it, like they get more attention than they used to. Do you see that you have more business than you had before Corona, just in the form of traction and interest?
I would say absolutely yes. So it's good for demand, but I think it's just in a way accelerating things, and I really hope that we're getting back to a normal. I think everybody just wants their pre-COVID normal life back. But then also what you see with and saw with all the startups, they had a much easier time transitioning to a pure remote, pure work from home, pure digital, because they were digital anyhow. Everything, even pre-COVID, was cloud-based in our case. We have cloud-based emails, cloud-based CRM, cloud-based everything. So it was not a big step in that sense.
So a lot of portfolio companies, they all went remote, yes. We just spoke about a friend who's living now in Austria and is running his company there because all his tech people are somewhere where they want to be. No one wanted to go to the office anymore. He closed it down, 70 people. It works pretty well. Do you think, I mean, we always said startups are not only more innovative, they also know how to work and incentivize the employees better, etc. Do you think more corporations now have learned from this and think, okay, we really should be more startup-like, because Corona really showed us what it is if you're too old and not moving fast enough?
Certainly. I mean, I think this current situation has fundamentally changed the way that definitely we're working, but also we will work in the future. The question is how much of it is here to stay and what is not. There are also about the question office, yes or no. Work from home, yes or no? There are very kind of big differences in the opinions, even on the startup and technology side, because but my very personal view is I think we'll see a blend and a mixture. So people will have more freedom, maybe a few days per week or a few weeks per month to work from wherever they want, but then also you have an office where you can kind of convene, where especially if you have, let's say, brainstorming sessions or really creative sessions, where you have a few days where you work together as a team and create this kind of team spirit, something like this. Because in many cases, you also feel and see that just a 100% remote work style is not always the best from many different perspectives.
So you have seen a lot, and I say this because many who are older in the system than you are not active anymore. You're still there, which some would say he hasn't earned enough money to be remote. I personally believe no, it's like we all want a purpose, we want something useful to do, and just doing real estate the whole day is for some people the right one, but not for everyone out there. We are entrepreneurs. So you have seen social networks, you've done e-commerce, you've done lead generation, now you do AI. Where do you see the differences? Like, you know, the final question is, can Germany do deep tech really? But we coming from an e-commerce driven, social network driven environment, can we, the digital industry, do deep tech?
It's a very good question. So maybe first of all, I think it's kind of an evolution because the question is, obviously you have to build the technology, you have to build the ecosystem, and there are some logical areas that are easier to transform and others that are a little bit more difficult to transform. The question is, can we do deep tech? I would split it in two sections, and it's a very interesting one. First one, can we do this? Yes, definitely. I mean, both in Germany as well as in Europe, we are very R&D driven. We have amazing universities. We produce an amazing amount of patents, all of that. So we're definitely one of the best places, if not the best place.
I think I don't see a lot of patents from startups. I see them from old corporations.
Well, I think you see a lot in universities. For example, if you look at the amount of quantum patents, if you really speak about deep tech, there's a similar amount of quantum technology patents in the US versus Europe versus China. So on that perspective, we're pretty equal. But now the interesting question is, what do we do with this technology? And that's the big issue. We're in love with R&D and with technology, but we're unfortunately not in love with putting this to work and building businesses out of this technology. And I think this is the biggest issue. The question is, I mean, technology itself, it's great, and you can say there is like a foundation of of non-purposeful R&D, but in the end, I think for most of it, there should be a question: how do you apply it? What do you make out of it? And for me, technology is only as good as the use case that's behind it. And we don't have the mindset to think in use cases, to think in business. And if I come back to the quantum example, if you then look beyond the patents, and if you look at the amount of startups that have been created, the amount of companies, the amount of people that work in these companies, and the amount of funding that goes in, then there's a huge discrepancy. And that's the kind of true problem. So the kind of, I think it would be great if we not only produce amazing technology, but also the applications behind it. There was just recently a study released, I think maybe even this week, which said the whole kind of broader deep tech sector, startup sector in Europe is worth 150 billion.
That's not a lot.
Yeah, maybe it sounds a lot from an individual perspective, but as
not even a quarter of Amazon or something.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like it's tiny. And if you look then as a company, which TikTok, they are basically run. It's an AI run company, so it's a kind of type of social network built around AI.
Yes.
Over half of their stuff works as AI engineers. So you have really complex technology, but put to a use case that found wide adoption. Now, TikTok itself is currently valued around 150 billion. So there's one company with great technology plus a good use case that's valued as much as the whole deep tech sector in Europe. And that's, I think, where we have to do more work. For example, one of my favorite examples is we have to put a lot more effort into how do we make sure that universities license out patents at acceptable terms. If you go to the US, you have they come to you and they tell you, okay, do you want to pay a fee, or do you want to have, shall we take equity in your company, and do you want to give us real shares or options, and here are different contracts, or do we have a mixture? I mean, you don't even have this discussion with the majority of universities in Europe.
No, it's even the opposite. I have done once an investment in a company which got Exist, yes, which is a scholarship, 600,000 euros, and the university wanted to have royalty fees for this. And the royalty fees blocked the whole Series A for a long time because it was, at the end, a very small amount. For the people in the chat, please ask questions, please comment. I have them here on the screen. I will filter them and ask them for Michael directly. When we were still at the ecosystem part, I think this is interesting. Let's summarize a little bit what are the critical components we need for a deep tech ecosystem, and then see where we are lagging behind, what's missing.
So clearly people with the right education. You need money to build companies, and then ideally you need critical mass in terms of scale. So you need supply, in a way you need supply of ideas and innovation, and you need demand for innovation. And demand you get with a critical ecosystem. And I think in general we're on the really right track, but if you compare this to other regions, we're still lagging behind. And also want to increase the amount, another one, and you touched it, is exactly that. How can we increase the amount of spin-outs and startups from universities? Huge area. We need to get like into another dimension of professionalism there. I would even suggest you don't do you don't give grants and funding to universities unless they have a really clear kind of spin-out concept for their technology.
And I mean, it's a common problem. We look at Fraunhofer, we look at DFKI, they all have a great ideas, but they can't really monetize on their ideas. From your sector, because you're in the customer service, customer support sector, we just had a talk with Ronnie, and Ronnie is in robotics. That's very, very long sales cycles, and the main problem is the infrastructure in the plants, in the factories does not exist to plug in your solution. In your market, is it easier because it's not a physical asset you're working with, because you're working with voice and humans?
So it's definitely easier than waiting for a new factory to be built until you can even have a conversation. But it really depends on the customer. So it's like the fastest is normally maybe a few months. We hope to get this down to a few weeks, up to 1 or 2 years in an extreme scenario.
Okay, and we will come back to the ecosystem, but your company is doing voice analytics, real-time coaching. I mean, that's when I describe a core technology was solved, the main challenge is to sell it at the end and to scale. I mean, this is where you are. Many startups and founders out there are like, hey, we try to fix something, we are amazing because we fixed it. And I say, no, you're great if you can sell it. Is at the end AI then just a commodity, just another software company just with AI behind it?
The question is now how you define AI and what do you need for it. So I mean, what people always think, oh, you just need a lot of data and you need then good algorithms. And it's true, like the algorithms that you need in many cases are, or the concepts are from the 60s, 70s, 80s. And the difference is now that we have a lot of storage and cheap computing power. But what you also need as third component, and that's actually probably the most critical even, is a good labeling and a good structure of the data. And that's in many cases extremely hard. Unless you have that, you can't build anything useful out of it. So, and therefore, I think you need the combination, and then you can create something really new, both from a technology perspective, as well as then from the use cases and the application.
So we're speaking here about voices. Your AI is listening into a sales call and is giving me not only a transcribe, but also like a real-time feedback. So I mean, I tested it before, and it's telling me, you know, what to say next, what keywords are good, what not. When you did this, how were the user is not the telco operator, they pay the bill, but at the end, the sales operator who's running your software. How do they feel about now having an AI? Do they think, oh, this will replace me, and they're skeptical? Or do they think, well, that's cool, I make more revenue, my job is easier?
Maybe I can quickly describe like what we do or the approach. So originally the idea came when with my last company with Rebate that was running were it was actually quite large and we had 10,000 people, out of which there were 2,500 telesales agents. And I felt that this was extremely difficult to run this call center sales service operations. And then I thought it would be nice to build something really useful there because many people have this problem. So, and then I thought, like, what do you need to solve with this? And one of the kind of aims was I want to have it really like real time, and real time defined as a full circle of getting feedback during the call in less than 0.5 seconds. So not near real time, not post call, but real. And then we decided that we'll build our own speech to text engine, so our own transcription engines. We're one of the very few European companies that have built a very high quality and good speech to text engine, which means it gives us direct control of the data, of the speed, of the integration. And then we have built multiple layers on top of it until the agent that talks gets real-time tips and tricks, what he can do during a call, like from speak faster, slower, to say that, don't say this. And that it helps them to get more structure into a call. It helps to improve the quality of the call, the speed of solution. It makes customers also then happier because they get a better and faster answer. And it's received very well. And I mean, agents love it because it helps them to improve, then ultimately also to earn more money. Why should somebody be against earning more money? It's a little bit like I would say assisted drive. About this, from a pure economic and business perspective, a lot of people say, oh, it would be amazing if we could automate everything. And in some areas, it might be possible, but in general, if you have two humans talk with each other, it's an extremely complex situation and setup. And I think, and especially if you have more than, let's say, 3, 4, 5 questions that need to be answered, with in many cases you need, even if you talk about kind of having a new electricity contract, a new mobile phone, or whatever, you have often 10, 15 different questions. If you wanted to automate that, it means your kind of software would need to recognize with probably over 99% precision each individual point. If you don't do it with, let's say, 99.5 or 99.8% precision, each of the points, and just with 90%, which oftentimes would already be good, then you get a very kind of bad result after 15 questions, because it adds up with the with the mistakes that you do. Meaning, it will take quite a bit of time until you can automate large amounts of human-to-human interaction on the phone.
What time frame do we speak about? Because my pitch is always, hey, people, if it's about AI out there or software, if you're in front of the computer, hopefully software will do it. But if you talk to humans, if you interact with them, that's very human. This will be for a very long time our main space to act. So, but then you're on the other side. What do you think, like, does it take 10 or rather 20 years or 5 years to could automate this action, just for potential possible?
It's very hard to say because also technology develops, but my personal guess would be rather on the 10 plus years.
Okay.
And if you think back, I mean, theoretically, 5 or 10 years ago, people said by the year 2020, latest 21, we'll have 100% fully automated and driving. So, I mean, it's very obvious that this didn't happen, and it's still quite a bit for many different reasons. But I think it's similar with a lot of the human-to-human interaction. And that's, by the way, also the reason why I decided at the beginning to say I want to build an augmentation company. Our vision is to build a software layer on top of the human brain to help them to interact better with other humans. Because I think it will take so much time until you can automate. And the question is, do you want to do this? But I just think it's really fascinating to see how can you kind of augment humans? How can you make them better? And in so many areas, we have hearing aids, we have seeing, like glasses to see, we have artificial hips, etc. But then what do we have for human-to-human conversation that's so kind of so much present all the time? It's kind of one of the areas that defines the human. And we want to build this layer and this platform that supports human-to-human interaction. So,
currently reading a book by Edward Snowden, and this played me over what you do, because it's question transparent customer, because NSA / they know more about you than you. I mean, they have all your history and whatever you have written, sent, or pictured. But you're also collecting data too. I mean, you're working with the calls at the moment. Is this leading to, like, the more data do I have, is this always better for business, or is there like a point where you don't benefit anymore? Like, do we need to gather more? Or is there like a threshold where you say, okay, this is cost benefit. We still can take care of your privacy, but also we get all the metadata which we need to run the business?
Very important question. First of all, we only do things if we have the consent of every party. So if we have the consent of the agents and the consent of the customers. Generally, my strong belief and recommendation is to give the consent, because you will get a better service. Point one. Point two is, I think we're trying to be very responsible, very reliable with the data and what we do there, and also our customers. Meaning we only take the ones that we need. If wanted, it's deleted after a while. We also put great effort into anonymizing data, so that we, for example, neither for customers nor agents, we store after a while certain names. We cut out addresses, credit card numbers, all of that, because it's really not in our case about the individual, but it's more about the quality. What's the right thing to answer? What's the correct answer? etc. And that's where we want to improve. So in the specific case of calls with customers, from own experience, I can tell you there is still a lot of benefit from the data, and there's a lot to improve because there has been so little been done before. It's one of the areas where until recently there has been close to no analysis. There has been close to actually certainly no real-time feedback because that was simply technically not possible. So there is a huge kind of gain in a way and progress to be made. If you now look and maybe in other areas in, let's say, digital marketing, and you have already optimized for the second digit after the dot or the comma, then the question is, do you need to optimize for the third digit after the comma? That's maybe not so much of a benefit. But in our case, so every new frontier you're accessing, and the area where we're in is definitely a new frontier, there's a lot to be gained.
Still an interesting thought that me being in a call center, we don't like call centers to call. Either they call us or we call them, only if we have to. That an AI is now running in the background and is writing down every word and is analyzing how I said it and what for both directions. I mean, we all know this is in theory possible. We know it's in reality also possible, which is good that you're a European company. You just introduced yourself as a European company, so you have certain values, and I would say privacy is one of them too. How do you see the European versus German game? Because many say we need more deep tech in Germany. I say we need more deep tech in Europe. What's your personal view on Europe, Germany, and where we should emphasize more?
First of all, I totally agree with you. We should really focus on the European market. We're so dependent and so connected. So to just say, oh, we are the Germans, and then the others, and maybe the French say, oh, we're the French. This doesn't make any sense for us. We, in this globalized world, with the two blocks being the US and China, and now also India kind of rising, we only have a kind of opportunity or chance if we act united. So I'm a big fan of Europe and very pro-European. And the answer is we need more deep tech in Europe, but what we have discussed before, we not necessarily need more technology. We need to have more startups. We need to have more applications and more widely used products that users love. We oftentimes it's like people complain, oh, the end user doesn't use my product. Yes, but then maybe we need to build more useful products. It's not the end user's fault. It's our fault if we don't build this better UI, better applications.
This leads very good to the questions in the chat from Cesare. He asked you, Michael, what do you think? How can we improve the collaboration between startups and companies regarding AI? And should we focus more on the technical aspects, or should we focus more on the use cases?
Also very very good question, because there is it's a big topic. It's but like both parties want, the large corporations want to collaborate, and the smaller one. Actually, with Redstone, we have done a lot of work. We've worked with over 50 large corporations on how to better collaborate between startups and corporations, and how to do this. So I'll share a few findings. First of all, what's very important is to be honest with the other party from both sides. So oftentimes the startup overpromises what they can do. And from my own experience, I can tell you, if you're honest and if you oftentimes also say, no, we can't do this, or we'll only be able to do this in 2 years, don't be afraid that they will reject you. It rather adds credibility. I've actually several times had the answer said, finally somebody who gives me an honest or perceived honest view, and who also tells me what's not possible and is not just saying every time yes, because it's also incredible. The second one is also from the corporation perspective, is be honest with the startups. Like, how long would it take? Just because you had a first successful trial doesn't mean that you're rolled out. Maybe this is just the start of the journey. You then go to the purchasing department, which takes half a year. Maybe there's even a tender offer, which takes another half a year. And then there's a rollout plan, which needs half a year for preparation. So before you're rolled out, actually 1.5 years are gone in no time. And for like large companies that maybe sell software or AI, they're used to this. But if you're a startup, unfortunately, by then you might be out of money. But you need to be very, and your investors are then going crazy and asking, like, if this has been so successful, why aren't they rolling out this immediately? What's wrong? Probably it wasn't so successful. No, it was probably super successful. It just takes time. So the corporation needs to be very careful. And probably the best advice I've been given in this respect: ask for the kind of negative feedback, in the sense that don't say yeah, and then probably we will roll out in 3 months. Answer will be most likely yeah, because the person doesn't know better. Ask them, okay, couldn't it be that it takes a year's time, because you also have to get approval, you have to get budget, you need to go to the purchasing, you need to integrate it, If you ask don't trigger positive, trigger negative questions when cooperating with a large corporation. And that's what probably I would do. And then yeah.
Okay. You recently made me an introduction to Vodafone, large telecommunication operation. And what I like about them is they have I call it an API for startups. So they have a whole unit which focus is to translate startups language into corporate language. So what they do is, for example, they started to work with I2X internally, and then they promote I2X in the company, tell you, okay, you have to speak now with purchasing, now with legal. And I think almost every company needs this to have something to bridge between startups who have different language, different expectations and different needs, especially for liquidity, and then corporates who will maybe switch the position, transfer somewhere else. You know, it's not that they don't want to do it, they just have a different incentive structure behind it. And the second I would like to add is Microsoft's industry. During Corona, they sent out a lot of robots out there to test, and they got a lot of feedback, and they only collected the feedback from the use cases which did not happen, and they learned the most from denials. They said most of the time, sorry, I didn't have 3 hours time to dig into, or I didn't get any onboarding, or it was too... Their problem was it was too complex, and the customer said, no, give me 10% of it. Give me a dashboard where I can use 2 features, because it's too much. Make a light version. So what they learned is they went after a year out with a light product, which is only 10% of the capability. They can roll out the rest, but the client was so happy, or many clients, with less for the same price to know more. This leads to the second question by Michael Speth. He asked you, Michael, what do you think is holding back German enterprises to adopt AI-based technology at scale? Or do you think a do-it-yourself approach will be able to close the gap to the digital natives? He says, we lost the B2C game. Will we also now lose B2B?
So the underlying question is then, what do you need to apply AI, or maybe even in this case, broader software? I think the first answer is you need a digitized kind of holistic approach from your company. If still a lot of, for example, the documents are stored on paper in an office, then how do you want to plug in any type of software? That's, I think, the first big challenge. In our case, for example, I mean, we've now built dozens of integrations, even into on-premise solutions. But one of the challenges was that you can have a cloud-based telephony system or an on-premise system, which means it's basically servers in your basement. We had to spend quite a lot of work on also being able to integrate into these legacy systems, which then at the time provided some challenge. So I think that the first thing is the digitization of a company as a whole, and the further we get there, the better it is. Second one is also from a mindset. For example, Americans, they rather like to try something. It's actually similar in a private life. You're friends with an American very fast, and it takes a lot more time in Europe, but especially in Germany, to be good friends with somebody. But what I find interesting, I see the same in a business relationship. If you enter as a German company with another German company, the mindset of both parties is, in a way, this should be for a very, very, very long time. But if it's supposed to be for a very long time, then you also want to take this very serious, you test this very long, you take the decision very serious, which means it prolongs the decision to integrate something new. These would be the two things. And then with the question,
Have we lost the B2B game?
Have we lost it? Well, certainly we haven't lost it. And I also think there's one critical difference with respect to the consumer market, because in the consumer market, you need very fast critical mass. So this homogeneous one language market is very beneficial. In the B2B space, a lot of companies, basically, they have their prime language is English anyhow, and the language of interacting is English. Plus, we have is Europe, we're still the largest kind of economic area in the world, with a huge production base, etc. So I think we're, in the end, very well positioned to build true world market leaders out of Europe in the B2B space. But it's definitely something that won't come from alone, and we have to put a lot of effort into this to make this a reality.
As you said, we need for this money, the capital, which is in Europe there, but very, very slow moving. I just announced that 10 billion will be invested just for Germany for deep tech, but this was 2 years ago, and it will take another year until it's out there. We need people. We have great talents out there. We have them. And then we need the demands, which leads to a question by Simone. She asked, how can we improve collaboration between startups and SMEs? So Mittelstand. So enterprises like Vodafone, they have business units for AI and startups. But what about the thousands of Mittelständler out there, who don't have a consultancy, who don't have an advisory board, which is based in Berlin? They're sitting somewhere in Unterhachingen and producing the best finance tools, but no one ever has heard of them.
I think it depends on the product you have as a startup, and it really depends also on the mindset of the people who are running these SMEs. And so what do we need? We just need the acknowledgement to say, yes, we want to digitize, we want to have a digital or maybe even an AI strategy first. The other thing which is important, I think, from an SMB perspective is, don't pick too many projects at the same time. Do one or two things and say, we really want to kind of do this now and finish this. Sometimes people are then so motivated, and they tell everybody, so now we need to put more software, and we need to put more digitization, and you have 20, 30 projects at the same time, and then nothing moves forward.
But I personally experienced this. I was at a large client, it's Mittelständler, but like 1 billion of revenues. And they told me, oh, well, we do this the way for 60 years. We will do it another 60 years. They invited me to talk about AI. I said, AI is not relevant for us. And I said, I can't tell you who will be the competitor, but I promise you in 10 years, someone will be either your operating system or running it, or a competitor has adapted all this and it will beat you by large. How do you make it clear that the sense of urgency is there? Also in the automotive, in the everything production, they realize they have to wake up. Some have woken up, but many haven't.
I think there is that probably most of us have seen this funny picture of who was responsible for digitizing your company, the CEO, the CTO, or COVID. And I think this past year has really pushed this forward and has tremendously changed the mindset and the sense of urgency. I think the biggest issue, and by the way, not only of traditional companies, of every company institution that has grown to a certain size, even for a Google, for a Facebook, etc. Once you have reached a certain size, it's just incredibly hard to do something completely new. Mm-hmm. If you look what are the main drivers of new revenue and growth at Google, it's one of the big areas is YouTube and it's Android. Both things that have not been developed but purchased by them. What is big for Facebook? It's, for example, WhatsApp and Instagram. Both things that they haven't developed but bought. So I think the acknowledgement is there. The question is, what's the right strategy? And one is pick a few projects that you can do in-house. And then the other big area, and that's a huge problem in Europe, companies, no matter the size, don't have an M&A strategy. Oftentimes they don't have an M&A history, and they just by not doing this, by not buying kind of good technology, good teams, bring them in-house, they lose out on a lot of opportunities. The best companies and fastest growing companies in the world, actually also on different scale levels, they oftentimes have a very professional and very structured M&A process and strategy.
Yes, DeepMind, for example. I mean, DeepMind was mainly European researchers based in London, and it was purchased by Google. Sure, it makes sense that Google buys them because they are willing to pay 500 million for this and use it, but they scaled from 50 people to 1,000 people with this, so they used this as a basis to recruit and build on it. I think it's a shame from European perspective that this didn't stay in Europe, that no one was willing to pay for this, at least a little bit. So M&A market is still troublesome. I agree. Let's look, we got the question, what is the implications if we use machines like AI to augment us? Still means they generate productivity. So productivity increase is coming by software, not by humans anymore. So I need not more humans to grow as a society. I could need less humans to grow, which means in total I need less humans to work hours. So growth is not coming about working hours, but leveraging with machines. And we have done this in the whole robotics space. I mean, we build our cars with a lot of toolery machines. What do you think will be there the implications? Less total of work needed, but more productivity, more generation of revenue, earnings. I mean, the question was, how will the monetary system change? Which is a big question.
I love this thought and that question, but and it actually has been around for hundreds of years. It goes back when you had a few hundred years in the industrialization, the first automatic weaving machineries, and people said, "Oh my God, we're going to run out of work." And it's like the headlines and the text is nearly the same for the past 200-300 years on this matter. And I think there's one fundamental flaw with the thought, and that's that the amount of work that we have is limited and can't develop further. So yes, the current technology and AI will play a big role in it, will lead to a significant jump in productivity. And then you can say, okay, theoretically, a lot of people have more time than before. Even a lot of the things that I did manually before is now faster. Even email writing is faster because you get auto-suggestion, you can finish sentences, all of that. But now imagine all of the work that you do would be automized. Would you have no idea what you would like to do? If I speak for myself, I would love it if everything I do today would be automized, because I would have a million ideas of what I can do. And there will be so many new areas that develop where you need people. And you already see this today. I mean, despite the fact that we have the largest amount of, or one of the largest amount of robots per capita in Germany, we also have one of the lowest unemployment rates in the world, which is completely counterintuitive with respect to the argument. We should have the highest because we have the highest unemployment, because we have the highest automation. The opposite is the case, because we're so productive that there's such a huge demand of services, of products in other areas where you need people, that it's hard to fulfill it. I mean, in many areas you can't find people. Obviously, currently there is a huge, and in certain areas, in certain industry, in certain region, it's really dramatic. But I think this will hopefully just be temporarily. And in general, I think we're going to see actually an increasing demand of work and not a decreasing.
So this leads me to two more thoughts. The one is we really bad need more education and reskilling to help people for the transition, because we need the talents. Second is I gave, I think, 2017 a TED Talk where I really said this, hey, people, AI is eating the world, be happy about it. You have more time to live. You have less work, and you have more free capacity to be creative, to express yourself. And students love it. The older they get, the more they say, no, I have worked for 30 years. I don't want that they get this. Yeah, it's very interesting. There's a certain envy it. But my main question or thought is their distribution of wealth. So Piketty wrote in Capital 2.0 that the whole 1% or the 0.1% of society is getting wealthier and wealthier and wealthier, while the rest is losing a lot. Which is true, because honestly, if you work, if you have a job, you don't get rich. You're paid for your hour. So AI leads to more concentration. I mean, Google, the whole GAFA, Google, Facebook, etc., are in hands of very few. Either it's funds, large funds, who own it. Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk are two of the richest guys of the world, and it's very concentrated because the tech goes up. What will happen? I mean, I personally fear social revolution one day, or huge tax programs like after Second World War, by the way, where they just tax 90% of your income if you are above a certain threshold. I mean, this can't go on forever. I mean, we can't look on the streets and see that people are, especially suffer under Corona, self-employed artists, they have nothing, and the tech people get filthy rich. And we benefit from this in a certain way. I mean, the moment you own crypto or bitcoins, you benefit from this a certain way.
So, I mean, it goes to a very, very essential question, and that's what type of society do we want to build? And in what type of a society do we want to live? And also here from my personal perspective, I love living in Germany for that reason, because I think in general we have, with this social market economy, we have from a tendency, have very good and very fair and balanced system if you compare this to many other systems. And it's definitely something that you have to keep an eye on it, and make sure that that everybody who wants to make use of their opportunities can also use the opportunities. That for example, for us, it's in a way a given that everybody, no matter if you work or not, should have a basic healthcare kind of insurance and service. Which in many other parts, for example in the US, that's absolutely not a given, which for me is kind of crazy.
No brainer, yes.
Yeah, it's like, actually it's also interesting that a lot that's considered to be right wing in Germany is considered to be nearly socialist or super left wing in the US. So I would say we can be very happy, and we go in a good direction where via taxes, we redistribute income and wealth, so that we build a stable society with opportunities and chances for everyone.
Is it still happening? I mean, Google, Apple, etc., they make billions with us, and they haven't paid their taxes. And then Trump went and said, like, hey, transfer all your money. By the way, here you get a flat fee once, and it's like, hey, we ignore that you have avoided taxes in the moment you start paying now. I mean, the US is taking us out, not by purpose, it's like the business model, they're taking us out, the Chinese too, but they do their own system, and like we are left, we have all the people we need to feed, which is fine, we have to pay for their education, everything, but there is no European large taxpayer anymore in the new economy.
If you look to the new economy, then it's partially right, but I would be very careful with this argument, and the reason why politicians haven't pressed a lot harder for this is because in the end, especially as Germany, we're an export-driven nation, and we're actually from this global taxation system, we're benefiting a lot. So yes. Even if you take what Google and Amazon earns, as a nation, Germany, we're still benefiting on a global scale from this, and that's the reason why the government struggles, I think, so much with changing this legislation, because if you change it for the tech companies, it would also mean for everybody who sells machinery, who everybody sells cars, etc., you would also change it, and the net effect for Germany and for German taxes right now would be negative. But it's certainly something that obviously you have to watch and take care, and I think also, and this is also independent of what type of company you have. If you have large corporations that earn a lot of money and they pay an average of 2 or 3%, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's tech or non-tech. I think most of the people would agree that this is not to be perceived fair. If you do business in a country and a country needs certain kind of public services from fire service, police, hospitals, schools, kindergarten, etc., nursing homes, who should pay this? So I think this is, and obviously you have to look into this and make sure that there is a fair balance.
So last couple of 7 minutes. We are, from my view, in a global competition for, I would say, the internet has broken apart. It's the European internet, and European regulation tries to do it for tax reasons, for legal reasons, GDPR, etc. You have the Chinese very tight system, and you have the more imperialistic American system. Do you see this as a competition, or do you see this as a collaboration? So, like, what is your view? Will it be one world, one government one day, as already Rothschild favored 150 years ago, and a lot of areas is going to this because it's centralizing, or you think it will be for the next 20, 30 years more breaking apart and more like Blade Runner style, like each ecosystem has a different language and API and rule set?
I mean, in a way, very, very political. It's definitely a huge competition. I mean, that's no question. The issue with this is a little, and there's also actually, by the way, there's huge competition between Europe and the US and European and US companies. But the good thing, if you look at these two ecosystems, that you can, I mean, you have the problem with the monopolies of a few large US players, but in general, you are free from one market to enter the other, and you theoretically at least have the opportunity and a chance to do this. As we all know, is Western companies struggle a lot in China, and there is this great firewall that China has. So that's a separate case, and I think, I mean, we're going to see at least two systems, a Western system and China, but now also, for example, Russia is building, in a way, their own internet. India has blocked now a lot of Chinese companies. They're still open for Westerns. Let's see how long. So I think we're unfortunately getting to a much more fragmented internet and a much more fragmented ecosystems.
So I watched the talk by President Biden at the München Sicherheitskonferenz, and it was the first time for, 4 years? Not 8, luckily, 4 years, that I listened the whole speak, and he was saying we need to collaborate in the West, the United States and Europe. We are friends, we should open together, we work together, and that we should strengthen the Western ecosystem. So let's hope that this will go there. How do you see, by the way, then Israel, India, Russia, like when the internet is breaking apart, do you think they will try to tag along at one of the larger ones, or will they break and be there like a tax haven, like Dubai will be very special and own laws, but they don't have to interact with the rest?
Well, I mean, I think Israel is very Western-oriented and very closely interwoven both with Europe and the Americas. The others, I think, are
just
I don't know, but my personal opinion is you will, as long as the kind of government structures are there as they are, they will be much more separate systems. And yes, I couldn't agree more. We need in the West, we need more collaboration, and in general. The collaboration has brought, at least us in Europe, has brought us peace and prosperity. If you compare this over the last hundreds and thousands of years, we never had such a long period in Europe of peace.
Yes.
Actually, in the whole history since humanity, than over the last 60, 70 years.
It's the most peaceful time we have. It's the most rich time, like wealthiest time, the most free time we have the most gadgets, technology. I mean, I sometimes forget to say this, but this is a fucking great time to live. Sometimes I just wish I would live in 50 years, but then I wouldn't enjoy it the same way. Let's jump a little bit, just for the last minutes, a little bit more technical, because we didn't speak that much about the technology. Because it's our partner today, how do you use AWS?
Yeah, so first of all, we use AWS. We use their cloud infrastructure, which is really amazing, because with my first company, with StudiVZ, where we worked, the cloud computing didn't exist. And I still remember that we had people whose job description was actually to screw the servers into the racks. We had screwdrivers at the office, and people who basically their dedicated job was, if there was a problem, drive to the server farm, to the buildings where our servers were, and then who is plugging in what. We had people who had to kind of whole huge department with system administrators. We had people who were responsible for purchasing them. Actually, it was a funny anecdote. When one of the first really large orders, they didn't want us to sell so many servers, and the answer was nobody needs so many servers. And I told them, yes, but do you know we're a social network? We will need this. And he said, like, a social what? Yeah, so like I'm still in a way that was my first experience. So from where we are now, this is great, and to have this, it allows you to scale fast. But it's mainly for both for storing data and then for calculation power. Also, actually, we run a lot of our in a way R&D on our algorithms, the models on it, the iterations. Yeah, so that's how we use AWS.
If you do on-premise solution for your clients, do you use the existing technology like containers, what they have, and you just plug in, or do you provide them hardware? Like if it's on the cloud, I'm fine.
We don't do on-prem our own. We always try. It's basically just where do you tap into the voice stream? So where do you tap into the telephony system? Is it through a kind of through a server that's on their side, or is it somewhat in the cloud? But it's always in real time, and from our sides, it's always purely software-based. Yeah.
How do you make internal sure that no sensitive, like personal data, is read by your team? But like I'm thinking like, okay, telco is tapping in, I know, and the agencies are tapping in, and maybe because we know that, for example, AT&T in the United States is storing every call by law. They do it, yeah. And so similar might happen here, but you are tapping in too. And how do I know that? Because I trust in AI. I don't care if the AI knows that I have problems or not, but I don't trust the human who's sitting behind the AI and is maybe labeling the data.
So first of all, we have multiple layers of rights who can do what to ensure that even on a theoretical level, only very few people have access. That's the first one. Secondly, there are very strict contracts that tell people what can you do and what can't you do. And you will always have the issue is like, is something theoretically possible? Yes, but then I mean maybe somebody infringes the law or infringes contracts and commits a crime. So and there's then special education around the topic, and with the specific, then we have what I mentioned before. We have special anonymization tools, so we cut out any sensitive data. And then if you speak about labeling, first of all, a lot of this can also be done automatically by machines. And secondly, normally it's just very tiny snippets, so sometimes even just 10 seconds. Or 30 seconds, where you can't really get a lot out of it. But it's a very important and sensitive topic, and we have a lot of measures in place to reduce the risk of any misuse.
Michael, as usual, a pleasure. We didn't see for a year. Finally, we are able to have a good conversation. Everyone is able to listen. And I truly enjoy this. Everyone else, please stay in the stream for a couple of 2 minutes before you switch. Michael, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you very much, Fabian. It was great to be here. Bye-bye.
Bye. You stay online for a minute. This was our second double feature today, our virtual chats. We will have more over the year whenever we think it's the right topic and the right people. You will now be able to switch to the roundtables. We had the first set 2 hours ago. Now it's your time. We have 3 topics for you. Topic 1, it's Erik. I had mentioned him before. He was a speaker at Rise of AI 2. He was also a virtual chat guest before. He will speak about that in customer service. Automation is key, but the human touch is still needed. Table number 1. Table number 2 is with Alessandra Mandrango and Vincent from Deloitte, Switzerland. Both work for Cognitive Insights, one for Deloitte, one for AWS, and they want to speak about how can you use machine learning to generate more insights into your customer, into your data, and into business. So it's more business orientated. And table number 3, and I feel like at a dating show, go to table number 3 to meet the right match for the next 3 hours, which is Simon Contreras, head of business development at AWS, and he will speak about AI for consumer packaged goods production. Honestly, I don't know, but we wanted this. It is focused, it's a deep dive. So now this is your chance to switch over. Also, at this episode, I would like to thank AWS for being a partner. They made this possible. I mean, we organize it, we do everything, but they made this possible so we can rent the studio, we can hire a crew to produce everything they support the ecosystem. They do this because they want more AI out there, more content out there, and they want to collaborate. I think this is something good, and therefore I thank them a lot. Also, it's time for me to say goodbye to the stream. I thank my whole team in the background. Follow us on Instagram, me personally, but also Rise of AI, to see how this looks and the setup behind the scenes. Please subscribe if you watch this on YouTube, and else enjoy your roundtables. We will see you again. Have a great day.